Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Jai Gopi. So, once again, thank you all for joining us. We'll just start with some prayers. Om Gyanatmirandasya Gyananjana Shlakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manokishtam Staptam Yatutade Swayam Dhamyam Dati Swapnantam Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Shri Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Namaskar So thank you all for this opportunity to try and serve by us going through the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. This is a wonderful book by Srila Prabhupada that is based on the biography of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu called the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So I pray for all your blessings, your justice to this class, so we can have a better idea of Lord Chaitanya's appearance, his activities, and his teachings in order for us to serve him and love him. So today we're going to discuss part 2 of the preface of Chaitanya, of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. So each week we are starting with the invocation, which is verse 18 of the first chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Guru Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Guru Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Guru Bhakta Vrinda. The translation: Glory to Shri Chaitanya and beyond, glory to Advaita Chandra, and glory to all the devotees of Shri Guru, Lord Chaitanya. So to recap, last week we were discussing the first part of the preface, and there Srila Prabhupada was emphasizing the importance of surrendering to Krishna and the mercy that he shows to his devotees in taking care of them when they surrender to him. So Srila Prabhupada was explaining how Krishna had told us at the end of Bhagavad Gita, ultimately, after all the instructions he had given Arjuna, that we should give up everything and surrender to him. So Lord Chaitanya's teachings are taking up from that point, teaching us how to surrender by him setting the example of surrender devotee. So Lord Chaitanya wants us to surrender directly to Krishna, to not waste our time on personalist philosophies, trying to get to Krishna in a roundabout way by going through his other partial aspects. But we surrender to Krishna, the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we render devotional service. So today, Srila Prabhupada, we're moving on to the next part of the discussion where Srila Prabhupada is explaining similarities between Lord Chaitanya's teachings and that of the teachings of Lord Kapila. Lord Kapila was an incarnation of Krishna who appeared to teach Sankhya Yoga philosophy. So Lord Kapila's appearance, his pastimes, and his teachings are in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada says, Lord Chaitanya's teachings are identical to those given by Lord Kapila, the original propounder of Sankhya Yoga, the Sankhya system of philosophy. This authorized system of yoga recommends meditation on the transcendental form of the Lord. There is no question of meditating on something void or unpleasant. One can meditate on the transcendental form of Lord Vishnu even without practicing involved sitting postures. Such meditation is called perfect samadhi. This perfect samadhi is verified at the end of the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Lord Krishna says, And of all yogis, he who always abides in me with great faith, worshipping me in transcendental love and service, is most intimately united with me in yoga, and is the highest of all. Bhagavad Gita 6:47. So we had discussed a few months ago in one class about Sankhya Yoga in brief. So we'll recap. Sankhya Yoga is a system of philosophy where one tries to establish who or what is at the cause of creation without starting off with the concept of the creator. And one does this by analyzing creation, taking it apart element by element. So one arrives at the root of creation. And because the root of the source of creation is Krishna, um, the sincere and serious student of Sankhya Yoga will actually realize that Krishna is the origin of all. And then the natural progression is to start rendering devotional service to Krishna. So, in that way, one can actually attain to devotional service through Sankhya Yoga. And this is why Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, verses 4 and 5. Only the ignorant speak of devotional service or karma yoga as being different from the analytical study of the material world, Sankhya. Those who are actually learned say that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieves the results of both. One who knows that the position reached by means of analytical study can also be attained by devotional service, and who therefore sees analytical study and devotional service would be on the same level, sees things as they are. So in the purport to verse 4, Srila Prabhupada says, one process is to find the root of the tree, that is Sankhya Yoga, and the other is to water the root, it's devotional service. The real student of Sankhya philosophy finds the root of the material world, Vishnu, and then in perfect knowledge engages himself in the service of the Lord. Therefore, in essence, there is no difference between the two, because the aim of both is Vishnu. So this is the connection between Sankhya Yoga and Bhakti Yoga for devotional service. So whether one goes through this whole philosophical study to find um, Krishna as the source of creation and then starts to meditate on him, engaging himself in the different sitting postures and breathing exercises, straining the mind, and then of course discovers him as the super soul of the heart, or one goes through the processes of devotional service by engaging all activities of Krishna, actually is able to meditate on all the time, one is sure to attain Krishna. But between the two methods, Srila Prabhupada does emphasize that to meditate on Krishna, we don't need to actually be engaged in these different sitting postures and breathing exercises. He says that higher than that is engaging all our activities for Krishna, and so we're able to focus our mind on him. And Krishna himself concludes the sixth chapter of Bhagavad Gita with the verse that Srila Prabhupada has quoted, 647, saying that basically someone who meditates on him through engaging in devotional service versus the meditative postures, that yogi is actually higher. And the Sanskrit of the verse is Yoginam api sarvesham taten antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yogam samyukta tamamataha. So for such a person who is engaging all the activities in Krishna, uh, they start with that foundation of having faith in him, Shraddhavan, and then they build on that by engaging all their activities for Krishna, association of devotees. And that person who engages in such activities, in such association of faith, is able to attain the goal of yoga, and it's the highest as Krishna says. So that means, contrary to common belief, the highest yogi is not one who has perfected meditation, sitting postures, and breathing exercises. Um, the one who is able to maintain a deep internal connection with Krishna, because yoga actually refers to connecting the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. That person who is able to attain that connection to Krishna in, of course, the most efficient or the quickest way, and then is able to consistently develop that relationship, that person is the highest yogi. And that is attained in the most effective way, as Lord Chaitanya came to teach us. So not only do Lord Chaitanya's teachings fall in line with Sankhya Yoga, but they're actually helping us reach the goal of Sankhya Yoga faster. That goal is called Samadhi, and that is simply the constant remembrance of Krishna. That is the aim of all yoga processes. So Sri Prabhupada continues. Lord Chaitanya instructed the mass of people in the Sankhya philosophy of Achintya Veda Ved Tattva, which maintains that the Supreme Lord is simultaneously one with and different from his creation. Lord Chaitanya taught this philosophy through the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. He taught that the holy name of the Lord is the sound incarnation of the Lord, and since the Lord is the absolute whole, there is no difference between his holy name and his transcendental form. Thus, by chanting the holy name of the Lord, one can directly associate with the Supreme Lord by sound vibration. So, as we were saying, to study Sankhya Yoga means to find Krishna at the root of creation. And then one is able to understand that the Lord is both the same as his creation, because his creation comes from him and requires him in order to exist, as everything rests on him. But Krishna is also completely independent of the creation and is always the supreme Lord of all, never subject to his creation, the laws of his creation, nor, if anyone in his creation, never equal to him. So usually it's a bit challenging for the mind to understand how the Lord can be one and different at the same time. Therefore, this philosophy is called Achintya or inconceivable. So it's referring to the fact that we can't very easily realize this transcendental power of Krishna and be both one and different with his creations, with his energies as well. But he gives us a nice example in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 6. Yatakaasha sthito nityam vayuhu sarvyogo mahan tata sarvani bhutani vastani upadharya. Understand that as the mighty wind blowing everywhere rests always in the sky, all created beings rest in him. So this is a nice example. The wind, having no real place to exist, is always resting in the sky, but the wind and the sky don't mix. If we look up, though, we can't actually tell the difference whether the wind and the sky are actually one. So in the same way, it appears that the creation is one with Krishna, but it's just resting on Krishna. Krishna is always supremely independent. So the difference, though, between what is created by Krishna and Krishna is emphasized, since we don't want to get mixed up in thinking that we are the same as Krishna, since we all are his creations. However, when it comes to the holy name, there the sameness of the holy name is implied in relation to Krishna. Although it is his sound form and therefore appears separate from him, because it has all the attributes of Krishna, it is him. So that sounds a little bit technical, so we'll put it like this. The name of Krishna is the same as him because it possesses all his attributes in full. But we, on the other hand, are different from Krishna because we have his attributes in very minute quantities. So because we have his attributes in small quantities, we can't be considered incarnations of Krishna. We don't have the full powers that he has. But because Krishna has put his full powers in his holy name, his holy name is an incarnation of him. And therefore his holy name is considered like all his other incarnations, Srimad Bhagavatam, the Archa or deity form, Lord Ramachandra, Lord Varahadev, like that, all the different incarnations that the Lord takes, who are all full of his potencies. So it's common for people, when they think about Krishna's incarnations, to be a little disappointed that in Kali Yuga, where there's so much of fault and so much of miseries, Krishna is not incarnating directly as they've heard of him incarnating in previous ages. They think that we need him now more than ever, so where is he? But our answer should be that when Krishna appears as himself, as he did 5,000 years ago, Lord Vamanadev or Lord Natsya, he is appearing to be in one place at a time to deal with a certain situation or a certain demon. But in this age of Kali, he has come as his holy name. He has come as the Srimad Bhagavatam. He has come as the deity forms in particular. And in this way, his incarnations are all over the world. And this is all due to the efforts of the most merciful Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, our beloved Srila Prabhupada, and all the devotees who are preaching throughout the world, placing the Lord in the form of his holy name, in the form of Bhagavatam, in the form of the deity, in every corner to give solace and shelter to all the suffering souls of Kali Yuga. So this is the great mercy of this age. Srila Prabhupada continues. As one practices the sound vibration, he passes through three stages of development: the offensive stage, the clearing stage, and the transcendental stage. In the offensive stage, one may desire all kinds of material happiness, but in the second stage, one becomes clear of all material contamination. When one is situated on the transcendental stage, he attains the most coveted position, the stage of loving God. Lord Caitanya taught that this is the highest stage of perfection for human beings. So when we begin to chant the Lord's holy names, we're all going to start with offenses because we've been contaminated by material nature for, for millions of lifetimes, possibly. We know that our original state is pure because, as we described earlier, we have the qualities of Krishna, who is the supreme pure. But whereas Krishna is Achyuta, who never falls under the spell of material nature, we are marginal. And when we come in contact with material nature, we automatically become contaminated by it. And to remove this contamination is not easy. So when we first start chanting, we start with offenses. And because of that, it covers our ability to actually perceive that Krishna is His holy names. And that is why we have to develop faith, because that faith makes us continue chanting even though we can't perceive Him. And in order to clear out those offenses, we have to start engaging in devotional service, the association of devotees. So this is called Bhajana Kriya and Sadhusanga. So generally it says that we start with faith, then progress to Sadhusanga and Bhajana Kriya. And through these processes, we come to the point of anartha-nivriti, where we're clearing out all our offenses. And this is when we can reach the stage of clearing out the offenses from our chanting. And by this, we're able to feel that we are making progress because of these engagements. And then as we're passing into the next stages, where we're becoming more fixed in our services and developing a taste for chanting, then we become less attached to these material things that Srila Prabhupada says colors our initial stages of devotional service. And we become more attached to Krishna. And when we start developing our relationship with Krishna with love, then we're developing bhava and prema, which are the ultimate goals of all yoga practices. Then when we're chanting, we're actually perceiving Krishna as we're associating always. So whereas we can realize then that chanting alone is enough to actually bring us into contact with Krishna, because of our contamination, because of our offenses, we can't actually perceive. So that is why we need all these other processes. We need to be in association with devotees. We need to be engaging in activities that are dedicated to Krishna. We need to be developing good chanting habits. We have to be clearing out our bad habits, consciously making effort to do that. And in this way, we show Krishna that we're serious about taking those steps towards Him. And He gives us the mercy that allows us to do these things properly, because we can only engage in services for Him, clear out offenses, basically make any advancement in this person. We can't do it with just our effort alone. But when He grants us that mercy, it makes our efforts perfect. And then we'll find that we actually will get to that stage of pure chanting. But until we do, we're just depending on that faith to carry us along. That is why it's so important to develop that faith as our foundation, right at the beginning of devotional service. So Sri Prabhupada continues, yoga practice is essentially meant for controlling the senses. The central controlling factor of all senses is the mind. Therefore, one first has to practice controlling the mind by engaging it in Krishna consciousness. The gross activity of the mind are expressed through the external senses, either for the acquiring of knowledge or the functioning of the senses according to the will. The subtle activities of the mind are thinking, feeling, willing. In accordance to one's consciousness, the individual is either polluted or clear. If one's mind is fixed on Krishna, His name, quality, form, pastimes, entourage, and paraphernalia, all one's activities, both subtle and gross, become favorable. The Bhagavad Gita's process of purifying consciousness is the process of fixing one's mind on Krishna by talking of His transcendental activities, cleansing His temple, going to His temple, seeing the beautiful transcendental form of the Lord nicely decorated, hearing His transcendental glories, tasting food offered to Him, associating with His devotees, smelling the flowers and tulsi leaves offered to him, engaging in activities for the Lord's interest, etc. No one can bring the activities of the mind and senses to a stop, but one can purify these activities through a change in consciousness. This change is indicated in Bhagavad Gita 2:39, when Krishna tells Arjuna of the knowledge of yoga, whereby one can work without fruitive cells. O son of Pritha, when you act by such intelligence, you can free yourself from the bondage of works. A human being is sometimes restricted in sense gratification due to certain circumstances, such as disease, etc. But this is not the prescription. Without knowing the actual process by which the mind and senses can be controlled, less intelligent men either try to stop the mind and senses by force, or they give in to them and are carried away by the waves of sense gratification. So Srila Prabhupada is explaining here that all the yoga processes demand sense control, because if the mind is madly rushing behind the objects of sense desire, then the mind will not be controlled. And as we said earlier, the goal of yoga is to steady the mind. By steadying the mind, one is able to eventually reach the point of being able to be absorbed completely in Krishna samadhi. That is the goal of all yoga processes. So without sense control, mind control, one won't be a successful. And that is why any yoga that allows people to just uh, practice it without trying to make the effort towards sense control is not actually real yoga. One is just eating what they want, hearing what they want, basically allowing their mind to think what they want. They're not going to be able to attain that state of samadhi eventually. So the problem that Srila Prabhupada is mentioning here is that if we try to artificially stop the senses and artificially stop the mind, we're never going to succeed. We know that Arjuna says in Bhagavad Gita that to try and control the mind, even though he was such a advanced devotee of Krishna, he says that it's easy to control the wind. So if one is going to try to artificially control the mind and senses, Srila Prabhupada said it's like a diseased person stop from eating. The person doesn't like the rule, nor does he lose his taste for eating. So in that way, the restrictions are doomed to fail. And this is why we have to give the mind and senses something higher, something superior, something spiritual, in order to focus on, so that the mind and senses will then come under control. So we give it something spiritual to eat, something spiritual to hear, something spiritual to focus on. And this is the correct way in order to control the mind and senses. So this is what we were discussing before, when Krishna was saying that the highest yogi is the one who's constantly abiding, uh, engaging services to him. This bhajana kriya, this engagement in devotional service, this is the correct way to keep the mind under control. So all of the activities that Srila Prabhupada mentioned give us quite a nice list of devotional services. They're practical for anyone. So mind control is practical for anyone, even at this age, despite all the difficulties that we face. And therefore, by fully engaging the mind, we can achieve samadhi in a more practical and quicker way than those repressive methods that the other yoga processes try to employ. Prabhupada says, the regulative principles and the rules of yoga, the various sitting postures and breathing exercises performed in an attempt to withdraw one's senses from sense objects, are methods meant for those who are too much engrossed in the bodily concept of life. The intelligent man, situated in Krishna consciousness, does not try to forcibly stop his senses from acting. Rather, he engages his senses in the service of Krishna. No one can stop a child from playing by leaving. A child can be stopped from engaging in nonsense by being engaged in superior activities. The forceful restraint of sense activities by the 8 principles of yoga is recommended for inferior men, being engaged in the superior activities of Krishna consciousness. Superior men naturally retire from the inferior activities of material existence. So, people who are engaged in yoga practices, um, they're obviously they're trying to attain goals. But if these are not spiritually motivated, if they're just trying to attain some physical improvement, to be more healthy, if they're trying to perhaps unblock their chakras and get some relief from the symptoms of that, or if they're trying to attain um, mystic powers like the yogis of the past, then these are all goals that are actually on the material platform. And this is why Srila Prabhupada so strongly calls these inferior. It may seem a bit unkind, but the truth is that to try and get anything material out of yogic practices is to actually waste one's time, because these gains are inferior. They die when the body dies. They're not going to help one on the spiritual path. So we shouldn't actually spend our precious time and energy to attain these kinds of things. Rather, we have to be aiming for a transcendental existence and transcendental goals. And because of that, we engage in transcendental activities, activities that are dedicated to Krishna, activities that are on the level of devotional service. And when we're able to do that, these activities are able to engage the mind in something higher. And this is how the mind comes under control of those who are engaging in devotional service or yoga more effectively. So Srila Prabhupada gives us a nice example here. He says that if you try to stop a child from playing by just making the child sit still, you're likely going to fail, because it's very difficult for a child to just sit still without doing anything. So the way to stop a child from playing is to engage the child in something constructive, something related to education, something that will help them learn something, rather than just expecting them to sit still. So in the same way with the mind, you're going to try to force it to kind of come under control, because engaging in yoga for material activities is not going to help us do that. We're going to fail. The way to engage the mind effectively is to engage in transcendental activities. And this, of course, elevates the state of the mind at the same time. And the mind becomes, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, our friend rather than our enemy. Prabhupada continues. In this way, Lord Chaitanya teaches the science of Krishna consciousness. That science is absolute. Dry mental speculators try to restrain themselves from material attachment, but it is generally found that the mind is too strong to be controlled, and that it drags them down to sensual activities. A person in Krishna consciousness does not run this risk. One has to engage his mind and senses in Krishna conscious activities, and Lord Chaitanya teaches one how to do this in practice. So Srila Prabhupada has taken us through how Bhakti Yoga is superior to this Ashtanga Yoga, trying to restrain the mind and senses and attain samadhi through meditation, breathing postures, and so on. Now he's explaining how Bhakti Yoga is higher than Jnana Yoga. So Jnana Yoga is a different type of yoga. This is when one tries to understand God through the philosophical route. So it means that one tries to generally develop theories that will help one achieve realization of God faster or better, more efficient way than other theories that already exist. And by someone engaging in this process, they might originally start with some kind of spiritual understanding. They get their foundation from that. But as they try and develop their theories and work through their mind, this is definitely not transcendental. And the problem is that they sort of lose their way, as Srila Prabhupada says, and they don't attain the mind control that's so important and necessary for their own practices. Because in order for somebody to be engaging, um, developing a philosophy that will take one to God, one's mind has to be under control. But they also go the repressive route, trying to control the mind and senses artificially. Um, since they're not engaging in devotional service, this also will fail. So we see that none of these prominent types of yoga is going to be very effective in this age, because they don't have a way of controlling the mind that involves it being engaged in higher activities. And that is why devotional service is the only type of yoga. Devotional service of Bhakti Yoga is the only yoga that is recommended Kali Yoga, in order to help one attain that goal. Um, Srila Prabhupada says, Before accepting sannyas, the renounced order, Lord Chaitanya was known as Vishwambar. The word Vishwambar refers to one who maintains the entire universe and who leads all living entities. The maintainer and leader appeared as Sri Krishna Chaitanya to give humanity these sublime teachings. Lord Chaitanya is the ideal teacher of life's prime necessities. He is the most magnificent bestower of love of God. He is the complete reservoir of all mercies and good fortune. As confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata, and Upanishads, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself, and he is worshipped by everyone in this age of disagreement. Everyone can join in his Sankirtan movement. No previous qualification is necessary. Just by following his teachings, anyone can become a perfect. If one is fortunate enough to be attracted by his features, one is sure to be successful in one's life. In other words, those who are interested in attaining spiritual existence can be easily relieved from the clutches of Maya by the grace of Lord Chaitanya. These teachings presented in this book are known to the Lord. So here Srila Prabhupada is explaining another application of Achintya Veda philosophy. Just as Lord Krishna is the same as his names, he's also the same as his teachings. And all these wonderful works that have come through the great teachers for our benefit, they're all the same as Krishna. So the Lord is reaching out to us in so many ways in this Kali Yuga. He really doesn't want us to suffer here forever. He sends us the teachings, His holy name, His own presence in so many forms, like the deity. He appears himself through the ages. And he's also maintaining us. As Sri Prabhupada said, he's Vishwambar. By him maintaining us means that he's giving us all our daily requirements so that we can utilize all this service, from the elements, the sunlight, the water, to everything that we utilize in devotional service. We're given so many opportunities. Even the difficulties that we have can actually also opportunities for our spiritual growth, opportunities to clear out our bad qualities and our offenses. So we even have other concessions in this age. The chanting is so simple for us before. Devotional services so easily modified to suit our lifestyles. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is our worshipful deity. He is actually more merciful than Krishna, and we can serve him without the strict rules, for example, that we would serve Krishna with. And then on top of that, Srila Prabhupada has offered us, as I've learned recently, a 75% concession in attaining our goals in devotional service. So all of this is actually making it easier than it ever was to attain to samadhi, to love God, to surrender, to attain to Krishna, and perfect our devotional activities. This is the great mercy of Karika. Sri Prabhupada says, being engrossed in the material body, the conditioned soul increases the pages of history by all kinds of material activities. The teachings of Lord Chaitanya can help human society stop such unnecessary and temporary activities. By these teachings, humanity can be elevated to the topmost platform of spiritual activity. These spiritual activities actually begin after liberation from material bondage. Such liberated activities in Krishna consciousness constitute the goal of human perfection. The false prestige one acquires by attempting to dominate material nature is illusory. Illuminating knowledge can be acquired in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. By such knowledge, one can advance in spiritual existence. So we see all too often that we're given such a short duration of life in Kali Yuga. If we're lucky, we can get to 60, 70, or 80 years. And we spend so much of that time focused on the activities of this life without realizing that beyond that, there is eternity. And nobody considers what we're going to be doing for eternity. And because of that, we actually make no uh, effort towards purifying ourselves and getting ready for that ultimate existence. And worse, whatever we've been focusing on in this life, whatever we've been trying to achieve, it's all gone. And um, it's like we said, we've seen it throughout history. Empires are lost, fortunes are squandered, memories of good times are all faded, and we have nothing really to show for all that time. Um, this is why Lord Chaitanya is asking us that we just stop the madness. we give the opportunity to devotional service, the opportunity that He's giving us to attain to real spirituality, to attain real salvation, um, to to attain that real safety of engaging in the highest devotional service, taking the highest goal, therefore ensuring our futures after death. Sri Prabhupada concludes, everyone has to suffer or enjoy the fruits of his activity. No one can check the laws of material nature which govern such things. As long as one is engaged in spiritual activity, he is sure to be baffled in attempts to attain the ultimate goal of life. I sincerely hope that by understanding the teachings of Lord Caitanya, human society will experience a new light of spiritual life, which will open the field of activity for the pure soul. Om Tat Sat, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, 14th March 1968, birthday of Lord Chaitanya, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Temple, New York, New York. So these are the lovely concluding words of Srila Prabhupada. His beautiful hope for us, it has real spiritual power because Krishna hears the words of his pure devotee. So as long as Srila Prabhupada is helping us, as long as we're sincerely trying to learn about these teachings of Lord Chaitanya, we're going to attain that goal this weekend, certainly. So thank you so much for your kind attention. Shri Shri Gaura Hari Ki Jai, Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Are there any questions? Any comments, clarifications? There are none. We're going to sing a bhajan today. So yesterday was the very auspicious disappearance days of Gadadhar Pandit and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Gadadhar Pandit is one of the Panchatattva. He is he's the actually the energy of Krishna Srimati Radharani, and discussed his wonderful character and pastimes in the previous class. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he is one of our Param Gurus, and we actually owe a huge debt because Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the pioneer of spreading Krishna consciousness throughout the world. By the time he took his appearance, Lord Chaitanya's teachings were actually um, fairly lost. They had been misappropriated by a few branches, and this is, of course, what happens in Kali Yuga. It degrades, as we know, all the good qualities of human being. It also covers the great treasures of devotional service, like the holy places get covered. Of course, it's only in appearance that it's covered. These things are always existing transcendentally, but he took his appearance in order to uncover them. And so he basically started the revolution of Krishna consciousness way by not just reviving the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, but creating an impetus to spread those teachings throughout the world. And this, of course, continued with his son, the powerful Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and he was the spiritual master of our dear Srila Prabhupada. This is how the plan to spread Krishna consciousness throughout the world was made, which we are all benefiting from. So we owe Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur such a huge debt as well, to be good preachers also of the holy that spirit, sharing our good fortune with others. So in order to commemorate these disappearance days, we'll sing the bhajan Jai Anilo Premadana, which is very beautiful bhajan by Narottam Das Thakur that we usually sing um, during the disappearance observances for great devotees. Jai Anilo Premadana Corona Prachu Jayanilo Premadhana Corona Prachu Enu Prabhu Kota Kila Charyata Enu Prabhu Kota Kila Charyata Kahamura Sarupa Kaha Sanata Kahamura Sarupa Kaha Sanata Kahada Saragu Nata Kapita Kapam Kahada Saragu Nata Kapita Kapam Kahamura Hatha Yuga Kaha Kabira Kahamura Bhata Yuga Kaha Kabira Ekakale Kota Kila Goratatira Ekakale Kota Kila Goratatira Kashane Kuti Mata Anale Pashibo Kashane Kutipo Mata Anale Pashibo Kodanga Guneira Nidhi Kotagereva Kodanga Guneira Nidhi Kotagereva Sabasangi Sangi Ekoilam Pina Sabasangi Sangi Ekoilam Pina Sangana Pahya Kane Narasamanga Sangana Pahya Kane Narasamanga Aniro Premadana Puruna Pashu Aniro Premadana Puruna Pashu Ena Prabhu Kota Kila Acharya Thakur Ena Prabhu Kota Kila Acharya Thakur Jaya Vaishnava 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 Thakur Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Gaura Hari Bo, Mr. Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Gaura Hari Bo, Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada, Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada. Shri Shantai Gaura Hari Ki Jai, Shri Gadadhar Pandit Ki Jai, Shri Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki Jai, Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai, Krishna Gaura Hari Hari Bol. So we'll read the translation. He who brought the treasure of divine love and who is filled with compassion and mercy, where has such a personality as Advaitacharya gone? Where are my Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the savior of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Krishna Das Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against the rock and enter into the fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to attain the association of Lord Gauranga accompanied by all of these devotees, in whose association performed his pastimes, Narottam Das, So thank you again for your kind attention, for the service of our discussions and the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. So we'll begin next week with chapter 1. Please join us. Um, may Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu be peaceful of us all. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Mataji, for wonderful class.